Japanese RPGs have seen a major resurgence this generation. I mean, on the PlayStation 3, there were definitely quality JRPGs if you look at games like Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. I point to some of the Tales games like Tales of Xillia, but in terms of quantity and quality, I feel like the offerings on the PlayStation 4 as far as Japanese RPGs go far outweigh the offerings on the PlayStation 3. You look at games like Persona 5, Kingdom Hearts 3, even Final Fantasy 15, you had those big budget games, but you also had those critical, massive successes like I mentioned, a Persona 5. You had Tales of games like a Tales of Berseria, which arguably is one of the best games in the franchise. Tales of Vesperia remastered as well. Ni no Kuni 2, I can go on and on. The JRPG offerings this generation have been very strong, and I feel like in terms of mass appeal to the gaming audience, Japanese RPGs have never been popular. There's a lot of games that gamers are starting to take notice of, from even more niche franchises like a Tales of, like a Persona. Those games in the past, yes, they would have their audiences, but I feel like more recently the Tales of and Persona games and some of these other niche JRPG offerings, even a Ys, they've shown that they can resonate on a more mainstream level. Are they going to be as big as, say, the Western blockbusters like a Call of Duty game or a Red Dead Redemption 2? No, but it goes to show that over here in the West, they can definitely find an audience. And with Japanese RPGs being as strong as they are right now, one has to wonder what holds in the future. Well, I want to go over a JRPG franchise that's finally making its way over to the PlayStation 4 very soon in this video. That franchise being one that I've talked quite a bit about on this channel, and I've talked about it very highly, and that is, of course, The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. Now, these games were announced to be coming to the PlayStation 4 a little while ago, and it was a little bit murky as far as when these games were going to be released. As far as the first title go, because it is coming out first, originally we thought it was going to come in February, but that obviously didn't come to fruition. Maybe that's because Kingdom Hearts 3 released right before it. If you wanted to follow up the release of KH3 with a more niche JRPG shortly thereafter, that probably wouldn't have been a bad idea. I don't know why it didn't hit that February release window, but now it has been confirmed to be released on March 26th. And there's so much to digest with the Legend of Heroes franchise, because while initially most of you are just gonna see it as Trails of Cold Steel and that as its own franchise, Legend of Heroes spans so far beyond that. These games have been around for a very, very long time. Over here in the West, they started getting more traction with the Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky series. That franchise was out on PSP. All of the games are out on PC as well. Those games are very, very good. Unfortunately, they do have an old presentation style, so it might be a little off-putting if you go into that series. However, that's not the series that's coming to the PlayStation 4. But what we're getting on the PlayStation 4 very soon is, again, Trails of Cold Steel. And bear in mind that this is a 4-part game series. Yes, you'll see some games that maybe they're 3 parts, maybe they'll have a sequel. The entire story of Trails of the Cold Steel is encompassed in 4 games. We've only seen 2 of those games be released in the West, and the entire franchise just wrapped up in Japan. And it's one thing if these games were, 20-hour JRPGs, like I'll point to a Dot Hack GU. Those games were released as 3 separate entries, but those games weren't anything crazy. I mean, you could complete them in 20-25 hours, maybe even quicker than that if you rushed. These games, even if you rush through them, they're around 40 hours at the very least, and if you take your time, you're talking about an experience that is well over 70-80 hours. And that sounds very exciting to some people. You have this expansive story to get into, but I also feel like it could be a little daunting to some people. A 4-part game series, and each game is as sizable as it is, and each game honestly builds upon one another, and they get bigger and bigger. And on March 26th, we're only getting Game 1, so what can you expect out of Game 1? Because the games do alter a little bit. Obviously, the story's gonna progress, how it's gonna progress, and Game 1, being a 60-hour JRPG or so, let's use that number as a number that if you play through the game at a natural pace, you do some of the side content, 60 hours I feel like is a little bit of a conservative number. Definitely can be more, definitely can be a little less. Even though it's 60 hours, that's only 25% of the entire series, so what can you expect? Well, really, Game 1 sets the foundation for the overarching narrative of the game. Yes, you get teases here and there, but it's more about character development, building the relationships between the characters, and building the world. Now, that sounds a little bit boring. I'm getting into a 60-hour JRPG, and I'm only expecting character development and world building, but no, the character development and world building is so well done that yes, while there's not a lot of crazy moments until the latter portion of the game, it's still very engaging the whole way through, and that's so surprising to me because you can keep these characters engaging for a long time. That's a testament to how strong the characters are and how strong the initial storytelling and writing are, because even with the initial down moments, I felt absorbed and engaged into the world of Trails of Cold Steel, which is very surprising. That's something very, very hard to do. Usually with a lot of games, you'll start off with something huge to really win you over, and then the game continues building upon that. But of course, with Trails of Cold Steel being this overarching franchise with so many games, and it's just going to be a very long experience. You do have to be a little bit conservative, you do have to build the world a little bit, you do have to develop these characters, but that just makes it when you get to those extreme moments, you're invested even more, you're engaged even more, and Trails of Cold Steel does that so well. Just keep in mind, there is a level of investment you have to be prepared for because you've got 4 games here, and game 1 alone is going to be a very sizable experience. But that's me selling you on the first game in the franchise, and things really heat up towards the latter portion of that game and into game 2. Game 2 is also being released this year, and very shortly thereafter. Game 1 is March 26th, game 2 will be out on May 7th. So if you're wanting to buy these games on day 1, you actually have a relatively short window to complete the game, and then you can move on to game 2 on day 1. If that's something you want to do, I know for a lot of people watching our channel, you're going to wait for a sale on all of these games, and then you're going to buy them discounted. Whatever the case may be, just be prepared for that level of investment. And I can sell you on the games all I want, but let's look at it from an objective standpoint. Keep in mind that these games were originally released on the PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 3, and PC ports also did come, so from a visual standpoint, don't expect this to be on par with some of the other PS4 game offerings, the big budget games. I feel like from a JRPG fan standpoint, a lot of you guys are more lenient about technical performance and things like that, so that should be perfectly fine. But the games have already been received very, very strong based on their releases. It's got an 86 on Metacritic, that's for the PlayStation 3 version of game 1, and an overwhelmingly positive reception on Steam with 95% positive reviews. The Steam reviews are usually something to go by, and whenever a game hits overwhelmingly positive, you know there's got to be some sort of quality in there, and Steam generally isn't that place where a ton of people are playing JRPGs, but The Legend of Hero Trails of Cold Steel is definitely one that's resonated on that platform. And keep in mind, again, in my opinion, game 1 is the weakest in the series because it is a lot of setting the table and it doesn't get really good towards the latter portion of the game. Still very good, I just want to reiterate that point over and over again. Game 2, on the other hand, the PlayStation 3 version of the game has a very impressive 90 on Metacritic. When we use Metacritic scores, we always talk about how hard it is to hit a 90, and for a JRPG, which I feel like sometimes JRPGs are reviewed a little bit harshly, not to throw my opinions in there, but for that game to get a 90 on Metacritic, man, that's super impressive. And once again, overwhelmingly positive reception on Steam. It's 96% positive. That's very, very impressive. That's only based on 800 or so user reviews, so not a ton of data there, but still 96% positive is a very good sign. And as I mentioned at the top, game 1 ends on an absolute insane cliffhanger, so I feel like if you do buy the game day 1 and you beat it in, say, a week or 2, and you end on that cliffhanger and you're just waiting for game 2 to come out, you are absolutely gonna lose your mind. It's one of the best plot twists that I've seen in a JRPG. It's just so well done, so well developed. You see hints of it there, and I want to shut myself up too much before I give you guys spoilers, but just expect something really breathtaking at the end of game 1, kind of turns the game on its head and really sets up the table for game 2 and the rest of the franchise to follow. And for those of you that do want to speed up the game, these games actually come with some improvements on the PlayStation 4 version, most notably a turbo mode, so when you're going through the dungeon crawling elements of the game, you can speed up the game, and that'll shorten game time quite a bit, and you can make your way through the game a lot faster. Doing that, I was able to beat the PC version in around 40 hours, but again, it's gonna vary person to person, and 40 hours for a rush playthrough of a JRPG, that's still pretty freaking lengthy. The one thing I do want to note is that if you are a newcomer to Japanese RPGs and sometimes you're a little off-put by the Japanese tropes, this game definitely has some of that. So in terms of being a gateway JRPG, this is one I would not recommend. This is a game for JRPG fans, ardent fans at that. You're ready for that level of investment, you're ready for that Japanese style experience. I just wanted to make that of note because I do know a lot of our audience are Western gamers, and you'll dabble in JRPGs here and there, but a lot of you guys are off-put by some of the Japanese nuances. So just wanted to let you guys know, but if you do get more into JRPGs, one franchise I would highly recommend. Now, what does that mean for Game 3 and Game 4? Well, Game 3 has already been confirmed stateside. That'll be coming later this fall. Unfortunately, that game, unlike Games 1 and 2, will be published by NIS America. NIS America have had some shoddy translation issues recently, most notably with Ys 8, but they are a pretty good publisher, and I hope things turn out well with Trails of Cold Steel 3, which really starts off like the second part of the story. Cold Steel 1 and 2 kind of encompass the first half, and then Cold Steel 3 and 4 encompass the second half. But what worries me is Game 3 is set to have a lot more dialogue, and now that NIS America is at the helm, that's a little bit worrisome because Xseed has done such a good job with the translation on Game 1 and 2, but I'm still hoping for the best. Game 4, on the other hand, which rounded out this series, released back in fall of 2018 in Japan. I imagine we won't be seeing that for quite a while, fall 2020 or maybe even early 2021. That's another game with a lot of dialogue, and they're gonna have to translate a lot, but Games 1 and 2 are so long, you have have Game 3 later this year, you literally have 3 of the 4 games in this franchise dropping on the PlayStation 4 this year, and if you've never experienced the games, that's a lot of hours of gameplay to get into for you JRPG fans, so that's very exciting. And I wanted to give these games the highlight that they deserve, because with so many games coming out, I mean, March is packed. You've got games like Left Alive, Devil May Cry 5, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, The Division 2. There are so many games coming out, and I'm sure heading into May, there are going to be more games announced and whatnot, and these games might get lost in the shuffle a little bit, but if you're a fan of JRPGs, even if you don't want to pick them up on day one, which I completely understand, these games are a little bit older and they're being released at a full $49.99. That's a steep price to pay, especially considering they were originally PlayStation Vita releases. I would have loved a, say, $39.99 or even a $29.99 price point release. You guys know how stingy I am, but nonetheless, considering how much content you are getting, I would say it's worth it, but if you want to wait for a sale, hey, more power to you. Again, The Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 1 will be released on March 26th. Trails of Cold Steel 2 will follow up on that on May 7th. 2 JRPGs to definitely be on the lookout for, and of course, you'll want to play these games in chronological order. Do not be the person that maybe because I said Game 1 just sets the table, you just jump into Game 2. I do believe the games have a recap video, but please do not do that. Play these games in sequential order, and you'll have the best experience possible. You'll have the ideal experience. That's the mandatory experience. I don't even want to act like that jumping in midway through the series is something you can do. Do not do that, because that would be absolutely absurd. That's going to conclude this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I added to the awareness of this game. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.